Hey, buddy, it's John. I'm back again. second show tonight. I kind of thought about it, and I really kind of wanted to make this its own thing because I think it's important. And again, I will say this too: everything you do, hopefully the light's going to stay with us. We'll see. Everything you do is at your own risk. Not alleging any facts, not casting any aspersions. Everything's all for entertainment purpose only. I'm going to talk about my experience and my opinion, and I'm also going to, be candid about my perspective and where I'm coming from on this. Well, there goes the light, of course. And so that's, I think, very, very important. You really have to take that into consideration right there. And again, I'm not giving you any advice. Anything you do is your own risk. Absolutely. But here's where I'm coming from on this. Let me show you my perspective. My perspective is I've been an entrepreneur for most of my life, and I've kind of, run my own businesses, done my own things. But also in anything that I did, I really like to have, I want to know what it is. I want to know the facts. I want to have the things laid out. I'm not someone that really has a short attention span. I'm very detailed. We all know I can talk, right? But I believe that if I have the best information, that gives me the best chance to be effective and to win, right? It's hard to win with, let me put it another way. How hard is it to win with bad information? So there's a lot of, I'll say this, and I don't want to get too into it, right? But, I have very candid conversations with my superiors, right? And I think that, and I've always really been that way. And I think that, I'm very respectful, but I'll, lay it out. And so it's interesting because maybe it's the automotive world. I don't know what it is. It's interesting because some people, they catch glimpses of conversations and they'll look at me like, oh my goodness. Because, I'll have candid conversations with people, maybe 3 levels up, right? It's like, or as high as it gets pretty much. And that's just, and again, that's just how I roll. But I also think it's correct. You want to operate at all times, in my opinion, with integrity and with candor, with honesty, right? And to me, it's like if someone hires John Villarreal, you're hiring John Villarreal. Or if you want to work with me or a client or whatever it is, we start a company together, whatever. And a lot of times, there's been all kinds of different studies on this, Kennedy and the Cuban Missile Crisis and Vietnam stuff, with the groupthink and trying to, you don't want to, anyone can surround themselves with people that want to say that they're the greatest and everything you come up with is right. And if you just go along with everything, now I'm not talking about, not doing the job. I'm not talking about not doing I'm not talking about being difficult just to be difficult. I'm not talking about that at all by any stretch. I'm talking about, if this is completely hypothetical and completely made up. I'm talking about hey, someone thinks that a swimming pool, if you're building a swimming pool, like say that's your company, you build swimming pool. Someone thinks that swimming pool should be 100 feet, and you think it should be 50 feet because that's just going to be more cost effective and fit better with this building or whatever like that. If that's what you really believe, then I think you have an obligation to discuss that. I think you have an obligation to talk about that. Because what are you really doing if you don't? Now, I'm not saying not be polite and respectful, but I'm saying if you don't do that, then are you really doing your best? Right? So are you really adding value? Again, all the themes come back. Are you adding value if you're not being candid with your superiors at your place of employment? you know, and then we can definitely go all about, we can talk about, well, what's the best way to, you know, there's all kinds of words, manage up or talk or communicate, and then the servant leadership and the other part of that, and all these types of things, right? And I'm not talking about, to me, I don't think that, I think I believe in markets. I think there's a marketplace of ideas. I think there's a marketplace for talent. I think that there is no different than brainstorming or anything like that. I think if everyone, like, you know, let's say, hey, I think all of our cars should be, you know, whatever, purple. Yeah. I agree. Everyone agrees. But then market research says that only 3% of the buyers want that. Does that make sense? Well, everyone agrees. So, you know, is it about everyone agreeing? Is it about not hurting anyone's feelings? Is it about, you know, what is it really about? What it's really about is for a company to do well, it has to deliver value to customers. And I think that there is, and that you have the Lincoln thing, the team of rivals, and et cetera. And there's a lot of different studies on this, but basically my approach is to be direct, to be candid, to have strong conversations. Not strong conversations. That's not quite right. To have candid conversations, you know. But don't be afraid to have a competition for ideas. I think that's okay, right? And if you're always worried about what other people think about you, or how is this going to affect, you know, potential promotion, or people not going to, you know, if I disagree, are people not going to like me? I mean, I think that, you know, what's that old saying? I'm going to get it slightly wrong, right? You know, basically everybody wants to take credit for success, and only one person gets blamed, or something like that, which is to say, and I'll twist that another way, or tweak that another way, which is to say that if things work out well, I think everyone will be happy, right? All's well that ends well, kind of, but not, I mean, that's not, doesn't, so, you know, if you see something, I just think that it's important so two things. I think it's important to communicate. Maybe this is what I'm trying to say. I think it's important to communicate, or a different way to say it. It's important to communicate at all levels, and I think it's important to have open communication up and down the chain. If you're too busy to talk to the people on the front lines, I don't think that's a really great strategy, right? And I think you have to have that feedback, because the people in the front lines are the people touching your customers. If you care about your customers, you got to care about your front line, in the middle, and et cetera, right? You have to, and that goes back to big data and AI and all kinds of different things. The technology is implementing these theories, if you will, that should be existing in different businesses. How do you get the best data as a leader? And as someone that's doing any role within a company, how do you operate with the best data? You have to have communication. You have to understand what the overall strategy is. You have to understand what the customer wants. You have to understand what the pain points are in delivering that product or service, or whatever you're trying to deliver as a company, or range of things, number one. And number two, I think it has to be candid. So again, if you have the communication, but you're not having candid communication, it doesn't make sense, right? You're not getting that data and information. And I think that as leaders, we have to be ready and okay and comfortable with people challenging us and saying, hey, you know what, John, I think you're wrong, respectfully. Or here's what I think is better. Or here's how I would do it. You know? Yeah, that's fine. I'll run that play, but here's what I think. Here's why I think that. You know, does that make sense? Right? So you and similarly, as leaders, you can't say, hey, well, I thought you were going to do X, Y, and Z, or I whatever. You're supposed to be great, or whatever you're supposed to do. Fine, but I ran your play. You gotta let me run. So right. So you you have to create a space where people can do their best work. You have to have communication that is free flowing, and it has to be candid, and you can't be afraid of that communication. And that's it. And as long as you understand that it comes from a good place, and it should come from again, that and that's the other thing. You have an obligation. I think you have an obligation to again, be candid with it. It's never quite that simple. It's always more complicated, and there's a lot of other things with this. But I think where I come away from is, it's funny, and I'm gonna get into the specific, but I can't tell you how many calls I get just asking for advice. Hey, John, what do you think about, I've been called the best idea person out there. I don't know if that's true or not, but I've been called that. Or people know that, I'm talking to you because, hey, you'll tell like it is. And I guess that's a badge of honor, stuff like that. But that's, again, I'd like to think I'm special and stuff like that, but there's so many things that I think that I do well that anybody can do. It's not, anybody can work hard, right? Maybe not, but I mean like these are just basic things that most people can implement, right? But you think about it, again, it's the golden rule. How would you, I mean, everybody likes to say, hey, your idea is great. Everybody likes people to basically, say yes and think, but when you think about it in your heart of hearts, if you're running a company, don't you want honest communication? I think so. I think that's super, super valuable. So that's what you got to think about. Are you taking the time to get the data that you need as a leader? Are you creating a space so that people can be really honest with you and even challenge you? And are you allowing your people to operate, yes, within your, plan, strategy, system, whatever, but with the ability to do their best work? Or even as, creating some hybrid structure. Like sometimes you've got to, you've got to create space for talent. Look at any football team. There's entire offenses that are created around certain specific talent, right? Hey, you know what? This quarterback works good in the shotgun. Hey, you know what? We're going to do the West Coast. Hey, you know what? We're going to do play action. Whatever it is. So, you've got to, because what are you really doing? What you're really doing is maximizing your assets, your talent, your people, and you're allowing them to be happy. If you create an environment where let's flip it this way. If you create an environment where your people are afraid to be candid, or afraid to challenge you, or afraid to be proactive and to be ingenuitive and innovative, that's not really a recipe for winning, is it? I don't think it is, right? I don't think that makes any sense. So I think that I'm lucky for sure. And I don't want to get very specific about current situation, whatever. I think I'm definitely lucky, but I think at the same time, I think these are things that people can implement. And sometimes, I'll preface things that, hey, permission to speak freely or whatever. And go about it. Again, I'm not giving you any kind of advice. Whatever you do is at your own risk. But you have to think to yourself, when you are talking with a colleague, a subordinate, a superior, what's really your goal with that conversation? What do you want to come away from that conversation with? And there's a reason for that conversation. Is if the conversation is just saying, "Oh yeah, everything you're doing is great," and "Oh, it's fantastic," as sales plummet or whatever like that. I mean, and not just hypothetically, right? You can't want to get feedback without getting honest feedback. So I think we have to challenge ourselves. Again, it's part of the last thing. If the economy is getting tougher, how do you gain market share? How do you still win? How do you add value? How can we collectively like move forward here? And I think we have to challenge ourselves to be candid. I think we have to challenge ourselves to communicate and be bold. I think we have to challenge ourselves to allow people to do their best work. And not being afraid of making a mistake or being wrong or being told that it could be a little bit better or seeing things a different way. Of course, there has to be, an overall strategy and leadership. Everybody gets that. But I think within that, the more you can create, in my opinion, a marketplace for strategy, for ideas, for all these things, and get feedback. Again, why is AI and big data and all these things so great? Because the whole theory there is you've got all this data that's out there, big, small, whatever, things that are maybe unnoticeable, connections that are not immediately, patterns that are not immediately noticeable. And you have the horsepower to be able to tie these things together and analyze it. If we can do that or create that kind of environment, you can do that right now in your organization to some degree. Follow me, I thought on this. If I'm the boss and I'm telling everybody what to do and everyone's got to tell me, hey, John, you're so great, everything's great. Yep. And no one ever challenges you and you don't really talk to people or let them lay out what they're thinking, then what kind of data do you have? What kind of real-time data? Well, I'm looking at the computer. I'm in the computer. I see everything. You can't. You think everything in the computer or whatever you're looking at, whatever reports you're looking at, you think that's all the data? What about qualitative and quantitative? You think that's all the data? Why do we look at Undercover Boss? Look at Undercover Boss, right? Look at how much. I never knew this was going on and that was going on, or this was hard. This, that, right? No, that's every industry. That's every industry. You get around that when you surround yourself with strong people. When you aren't afraid to be challenged. When people can challenge you. When you can have that open communication. When you let that communication flow. When you reward innovation. When you reward ingenuity. So that's what I mean. I don't have all the answers. But again, I think I'm looking at this a certain way and I'm asking certain questions. How do you challenge yourself to be better? How do you get more out of your organization? How can you immediately get your organization more dynamic? And look, at first, like maybe if you have different meetings, maybe it will be a complaint session. Well, I don't like this, and I think we should have, snacks over here and whatever it is. Okay. But if someone brought it up, that's real for them to some degree, right? And that doesn't mean you can have just endless meetings all the time. And that doesn't mean that you don't have to execute a plan and a strategy. But I think that there's a better way to do it than a lot of the ways. And that's no different than the overarching, and that's a whole different thing of, again, regional advantage, Annalise Saxenian, Dr. Saxenian, Dean Saxenian from Berkeley, I believe, of why Silicon Valley beat out Route 128. Right? Because it was, very siloed. This is a dramatic oversimplification, in my opinion, paraphrased, of, when you had these legacy companies, East Coast, everything's made here. We don't deal with outside versus this, like, hey, let's work together. Let's collaborate. Let's do open source stuff. Let's work on different things. Let's move around. And you had a marketplace and a dynamism in Silicon Valley that dramatically changed the situation. And I think that's what you have to do, right? Again, if you want to be dramatically better, you need to be dramatically different. How do you constantly iterate? How do you get the right information? Your people are your eyes and ears. They are dealing with the customers. They are dealing with the product. You need feedback. You need to constantly adjust. How do great champions win? Whether it's in football, boxing, whatever, golf. They make adjustments. They get innovative. They look at things in different ways. The great business leaders, we've seen this. We continue to see it. And so I think that's what you have to do. You have to challenge yourself, put yourself out there to be uncomfortable, particularly if you're in a leadership spot. So again, I get calls, I get texts, and people just want me to be a sounding board. They just want ideas because they know they're going to get it straight. I like this, I don't like this. This is good, this is bad, whatever it is. That doesn't mean, so, don't be phony about it. Just, like, oh, okay, you want to be the contrarian or everything's a yes. No, be real about it. But I think if you can live in that space of being authentic and adding value, again, it just comes back to the same themes. How do you add value? That's it, right? So I want to put that out there. Sorry, I couldn't get sorry again for the light. I got to figure that out. Sorry, I can't get too specific. But look, I try to be cool and respectful of everybody and stuff. And I think that the themes are way more important anyway, right? But it's funny because I have people that like, oh my goodness, they can't believe how candid I am, but I don't know any other way to be. I don't know how else. How does it make sense to be any other way? How does that make sense? Long term, medium term, sure, short term, that's easy. Well, how does that make sense, medium or long term? It doesn't make sense. You're not adding value. If you're saying, yeah, this is great to something that that it doesn't work or you have questions about it or customers hate or what, again, completely hypothetical, right? So I like getting ahead of problems. So anyway, those are my thoughts. Love to share yours. What are your strategies? What do you think? How do you deal with your boss? Are you an entrepreneur? We're seeing a lot of people, and listen, this isn't just a John thing. We're seeing so many people. We're seeing the Great Resignation, quiet quitting. We're seeing people. There's big changes right now. Remote work and everything, which gives you a degree of autonomy. What does that relationship look like? What does that communication look like? What do we need to do that? These are open questions. These are things that we've been talking about on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook. There are offices right now. They're being studied in great universities, whether it's Johns Hopkins, and I don't know anything specific. I'm just saying generically these workplace questions and business questions. Berkeley, Stanford, Harvard, Yale, Northwestern, Chicago, Wharton, et cetera, et cetera. So what do you? This is. I really think, particularly in the realm of social media and its communication and this transparency, I think this is one of the, I really need to think more about this, but the more I think it's one of the biggest points of evolution and disruptions and challenges out there, if you will. And we're going to see how people react to it, and meaning that where does it go from here? I think we're seeing a lot of changes right now. So it's very interesting, but I'd love to hear your thoughts about it. And more importantly, love to hear your experiences. So in what you think. Do you agree with me? Do you disagree? Where do you come out on it? Let me know. Please rate this video up. Also, please post it on social media. And also, please, if you're not subscribed, please subscribe. And just, again, love to hear what you think and what your experiences are. If you want to be, I don't know, just if you want to keep it generic, you can keep it generic. I mean, again, everything. I'm not giving anyone advice. Everything you do is at your own risk. But all right, I just want to put that out there, and I felt like it probably should have been its own thing, so that's why we did it right here. So thanks so much. Have a great night. See you later.